Christopher S. Mahan saw a spike in teen suicides in his county in Florida, but Chris didn't just stay silent. He built a movement. He is a speaker, family coach, and host of the Lead Your Teen podcast. Chris S. Mahan empowers overwhelmed parents to stop managing and start leading their teens with strength, clarity, and love. We're here on the Marketer of the Day podcast with Robert Plank. We're brought to you by dfypodcast.com. We handle your editing and your promotion so your voice can lead the way. And the leadership we're here to talk about is one of these most important jobs in the world. Doesn't matter if you're man, woman, parenting, right? That next generation, raising your kids right, so that way they treat the world and life better than you have. And it's just an upward track. We're here to talk with Chris about maybe the ways that we go wrong as kids and as parents and how we can better lead our teens. So, Mr. Christopher S. Mahan, glad to see you. How the heck are you?
Thank you so much, Robert. This is awesome. Thank you so much. I do appreciate it. This is amazing. Every time I get a chance to talk about the things that matter to me, I enjoy it. And I know we have only a short time, but I can go for hours and hours. So I absolutely love this, trying to help people, help young people, help families. It's just, I don't even know why sometimes,
Sure.
but I just know that this is what I've been doing now for over a decade, and I can see myself doing it till I can't speak anymore. So I absolutely love it. I think it's very, very important that we support our families and our young people, especially in today's crazy world. So everything that you do as well, I know you and I've had a lot of lengthy talks about different things. I appreciate everything you're doing with your son, and just helping people like myself get our message out there is greatly, greatly appreciated.
And it's an important conversation to have. And I struggle with it so much because it can seem cliche or sappy to say these things like family is so important. But then I'm always looking to tap into the Mr. Rogers of it all. I'm not even sure how to explain it, but just that idea of how important it is to care about people, to brighten someone's day, and to overcome the maybe wanting to pace yourself, right? Because like like you're even just knowing you, right? You're a guy that sometimes you'll chat with someone for half an hour, for an hour, just because that's what the happenstance of life has become. But sometimes I think like, oh man, I've got to get some work done. I've got to pay the bills. If I spend an hour talking to Chris, I only have so many of those slots in the day. I can't help 10 people, can't help 20 people. So do you ever have these thoughts? Do you ever try to reconcile of saying like, you want to help people have these one-on-one conversations and talk about the teen parenting and all that, but you say, well, I only have so much to give, and I'm worried about maybe being a waster of my own time. Do these thoughts ever enter your head?
That's a great question. Years ago, when I was first starting this type of work, because it was not my original career path, this was something that just kind of happened. So I think years ago, what I was having was the imposter syndrome, the doubt. Is this really where I should be talking to people? Is this really what I should be doing? And sometimes I would go off on tangents like I'm known to do. And then sometimes I'd be like, wow, I really learned something just talking to that person. And other times you'll start talking to somebody out of the blue, like completely just a random conversational start. And those are the ones that I get the most energized by, because it was just random. And when you can walk away from a conversation just as organic and spontaneously started as anything, and that person walks away and thanks you, just that little bit of information that you gave them, that to me is worth everything. And I will do those all day, every day. If I can just help people just on the whim. And years ago when I was starting this, I was trying almost too hard to help people. And I think they got burned out by my message. So now I had to just kind of, take it back and just let things happen when they happen, but be ready. I think the biggest thing in this type of work is, because you're never going to know who you're going to talk to or what their situation is. For me, I like to always be ready. And that just means that if someone says, hey, I've got a problem with my daughter who's cutting, or I have a son who just will not leave his room, or I have a spouse who just does not see eye to eye with me on how we should do something. I love to have those quick conversations and just give people little nuggets to get them to think. And when I do that, I walk away energized. I walk away knowing that I gave them in that 30 seconds, maybe a minute, I gave them years of experience. I gave them hours and hours of research time, all for free. And when I see them walk away feeling a little bit better, a little more energized themselves, as cliche as that sounds, I really do love that. And I know that the hours that I put into doing things and the hours that I've lost with my own kids because of writing books and doing podcasts and doing these things, even though I included them as much as I could, I did lose a lot of hours with my own children to make it better for others. And in doing so, the research that I did, I realized that I was a bad dad. I was a bad dad because I did everything like everybody else does. I followed the rules of society. I followed the rules of the schools. I followed the rules of, well, that's how we always did it. We grew up, so you have to do it that way. And when my oldest son was 9 years old in the third grade, he took what here in Florida that was called an FCAT. It was a pre-test to go into fourth grade. They took a practice test the second week of third grade. He was 9 years old and he failed it. And instantly, when I found out he failed it, I went back to my own childhood, my own 9-year-old self, and how horrible school and how hard it was for me. And I cussed him out. Do you want to fail? What's wrong with you? He was 9 years old, Robert. And I think of that moment. I'm like, man, I was a jerk. So in the book, I talk about all of the things that I did wrong, how I listened to everybody, how I felt like, and you know this, you did the voiceover for me. I felt like a car on a track that I couldn't steer myself because the track was already set out for me and how I was supposed to do things. And I had to look at myself and listen to what I was saying to my boys and how I was saying it and how I was reacting to them, and then realize that this was all my own broken childhood issue coming out on them, and it wasn't fair. So when I started the whole thing, it was just because I love psychology. I got out of the film industry, did that for 25, almost 30 years, went back to school for psychology and discovered that I love helping people, human behavior. And then it was through that I discovered that kids in our county here were killing themselves like 1 to a month. You know, the school year of 2012, 2013, 2011, we were losing kids 1 a month. And I was like, wow, this is, you know, my sons are coming up at this time. They were now middle school, and it scared me. I was like, what's going to happen with them? So I decided that if, you know, you're going to make a mark, you need to just put your money where your mouth is and do it. So when this young lady by the name of Jessica Laney took her life at a local high school here, didn't know her nor her family, I decided that I wanted to do something. So within a month, we started Crazy 8 Freedom. Now, for those of you who know Tony Robbins, you know that he has a thing called the Crazy 8. And the Crazy 8 is his way of describing the cycle that people get into. And I loved that. So I called it Crazy 8 Freedom to break the cycle. I thought, man, does Tony own that right? I don't know. So I called his office in California. I talked to his assistant. She said, nope, we don't own that. You can use it. I think he'd love it. So I named it Crazy 8 Freedom to help kids get out of this cycle of depression, anxiety, self-harm, the bully victim scenario. And in doing so, I did public events. I talked at schools until they kicked me out. I will say that back in 2013, 2014, schools did not like you talking about suicide. And I had a really hard time getting my point across to anybody that would listen. It was like, you know, beating your head against a wall. And it was frustrating, you know. So to answer your question again, it was frustrating back then because no one would listen. And the frustration that I felt to get parents to understand, if you don't do this, you're going to have a kid that is going to go one of two ways: incarceration, overdose, death. That was pretty much what they were all doing. And that's very grim. That's a very grim reality and a very dark way to look at things. And the more it happened, I just got more consumed with, why are kids doing this? What is happening to this whole generation where young people think their life isn't worth living to another day? What is driving them to feel so broken that they cannot see the light through the tunnel? And I don't even have the answer for that. I know that at the time, cell phones were coming out, the selfie thing, the craze was coming out, and more apps were coming out. And so the digital world was really, really exploding 10, 15 years ago. And as that was happening, more and more anxiety, more and more suicide, more and more self-harm, more and more bully victims, more and more school shootings. All these things were adding up. And I was like, what in the world's going on? And I couldn't get anybody to listen to me. So I started what is now the book that you helped with as a rant on Facebook. Every time something would happen, I'm like, this is wrong. And so I came up with the idea of parental leadership after going to a morning breakfast business talk to talk about parental leadership. And I got basically run out of the room. I had gotten run out of the room because the parents there and the business owners there said, our kids go to this high school. Nothing like that ever happens at our high school. And this was in February 2014. In April 2014, a young man from that very high school that they were bragging about took his life. I thought, wow, if I could just be a fly on the wall, because I tried to warn them. I tried to tell them. But that was the more affluent school, not the poor kids, not this, not that. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's no boundary for this. There's no socioeconomic boundary. There's no this house or that house or who drives a Mercedes, who drives this. That doesn't matter when it comes to kids' emotional distress. So with all this going on, I kept pushing, and I was ostracized. I was no longer allowed in schools. I was no longer allowed to talk at community events because I was bringing the dark message. I was that Grim Reaper guy. Mm-hmm. And the more the things happened, I kept doing more rants on Facebook. And I created a blog back in the day on one of those blog sites. And all of that is what accumulated into the book that you helped with, this one. This is the book that is 10 years plus in the making. And I since have worked with over 1,000 young people, taught over 7,000 hours of my workshops. And all of that information came from those early days of just a frustration. So now, when I can help somebody for just a minute or 30 seconds, it is absolutely great. I mean, I never done drugs in my life, but I get this euphoric feeling like, wow, maybe I helped them make a turn. Maybe I help them see a different angle of how they talk to their kid, or how they can help them, go after this goal, what they can do. And that happened just the other day. I was on the phone with my bank because my card had apparently been hacked. And I was talking with a lady, and I made a joke about getting a royalty check from the book, and someone go buy a coffee, and we're joking, and she said, what'd you write? So I told her, and she went on Amazon as we were talking, and she said, well, I have 2 kids. I have an autistic son who's 9 and a daughter who's 7 who is not autistic, and it's hell because I'm trying to do things for him, and she sees me do things for him, and then she gets upset and misbehaves because she thinks I'm favoring him too much. And so I literally gave her a 45-minute talk while we were on this bank call. And it was funny because her supervisor heard in the background, they were like, why are you still talking to this person? What's going on? So she had to quickly say, oh, thank you for talking to so-and-so bank, and have a nice day. It was kind of funny. But she bought the book, and she's like, I'm going to do a review. Here's my name. When you see it, it's me. I got off the phone, and it wasn't even that I sold a book. It was the fact that I took this mom who had this problem with her autistic 9-year-old son and her non-autistic 7-year-old, and the conflicts that were happening, and how I was able to give her some hope, help her make some changes, and help her talk to her husband a certain way, because it was causing stress between the two of them as well, and how they handled things. Those are the moments that I look back and go, man, who would have thought 10 years ago that I'd still be doing this? I'd have a book on it, a podcast with 100 episodes. And now I am back in the school speaking, and I'm working with local library, and I'm doing things with them, and here with you. This is like an amazing thing.
Yeah.
So I do love what I do, and I do love helping people get through that dark time in their family, because there is no other greater relationship than the parent-child relationship. There just isn't. And I tell people all the time, if the home is broken, society's broken. Because what the home puts out in society is a reflection of that home. And if all this craziness we see in Chicago and in Detroit and not even just the big cities, but in small towns, things are happening all over the place. What are we putting out into the world if our homes are this dysfunctional? I'm not supposed to use that word according to a counselor friend of mine. We're supposed to use the word challenge, but I say dysfunctional. If this is what we're doing, how can we expect our young people to be successful? How can we expect our workforce to be successful? How can we not expect to see more and more craziness on TikTok and more school shootings and all this negative stuff? Because what we're putting out in the world starts in the home, in the living room. And that was the message I tried to tell people years and years ago. And again, I was like the negative Nancy. I was the guy that just didn't see anything positive. And that wasn't the case at all. It was just, I knew that if we don't do this because of human behavior and the way the brain gets conditioned and what happens, in the way I was as a dad, I was conditioned to believe that this is how you did things. It's never going to get better. We have to stop it. And it starts with parental leadership, 100%. So that's my rant.
Yeah. I can see why. I can see with the storytelling and the speaking and the podcasting and the Facebook posts how that could lead to you getting your message figured out. And like you have to wonder if the harshness, the meanness, it probably did serve humankind well for millions of years, right? The weakest die off, and if you're the loudest and the bully, like of course that made sense during medieval times and caveman times and all that. But now that we're living in a more of a civilization, it's like, well, that stuff backfires. But I imagine that it's like built in human programming. And like, you give me all these flashbacks to like, I just have the one kid, one and done. He's 5 years old. He's autistic. But like, it took a good like 2 years to override so much programming, right? Like the kid cries and you want to shout at him. You want to say, oh, well, crying, I'll do anything you want. Like it's my biology. And then you have to just like see a better way that it's done and kind of like use like, so much logic, right? So many layers and so much of like months, years of like reconditioning yourself. And it's so much work just to not repeat the same mistakes that your parents and their parents did, of just like the chain of streaming basically, right? And just to figure out a better way. And it just seems like all these things, all these ills of the world that you're talking about, it seems like if we don't manually override and have a plan and say, well, I'm going to like push towards optimism and being more organized. If you don't have that, then all the bad gets in, right? The debt, the addiction, the anger, the screens, the school shooting. It seems like in a way it's all in kind of the same category, right? Of just the negative space and all just the muck that kind of soaks in if you don't counter it yourself. And so I know that this book is called Parental Leadership: 7 Principles to Lead Your Teen in the Digital Age. And what you're making me realize is that there were all these many years of like being a business owner, and I never delegated. I never hired anyone else to do work. I thought all the usual stuff, right? I can do it better. I can do it faster. I wouldn't be able to explain it. And then as I had my one child, I realized like, oh, he needs to learn how to take the garbage out, how to put the
Mm-hmm.
roll of toilet paper on the wall. And at the same time, I feel like I solved that problem in my head. And I also at the same time said, I can't do it all in myself in my business. I have to be a leader in that aspect too. So it was like one solution solved another solution, and it's a great message. And so, can you tell us about? I mean, we've been chatting, and the time flew by. But what is different? What stands out about this book? What got the Wells Fargo lady to go and rush and buy it? What's so great about it?
I think after that young boy in 2014, the last one that I was talking about, took his life, I had to figure out a way to get people to see it in a bigger picture. And being a business person, I only knew business. So I thought, having children is like having a product, right? If I'm going to sell this pen, I need to market it and find people that want to buy it, things like that. And if I can't sell it, I'm going to go out of business. Okay, I'll start something else. No big deal. But if this pen represents my child and I don't think about all the things that can affect his life, all the threats, all the things out there, just like in a business. So in the book, I have a SWOT analysis. So we talk about, well, why is that important? A root cause analysis. Why is that important? A business plan. I actually came up with the business plan idea back in 2014, and there was a dad I was talking to. He was like, wow, the kids aren't in business. That's ridiculous. I said, but wait a minute. When your child is 0 to 5, they go into the system. They go into school of some kind. And when they go into school, that's when you kind of lose some control. If your kid is not prepared for that, they're going to tell you, oh, they got to go on these meds, or they got to go in this program. They got to do this. You don't have any more control over it. If you, at age 3 or 4, realized my son, my daughter is having issues in this area, let me empower myself and get them prepared, maybe school won't be as hard for them. But so many parents just put their kid in school, put them on a bus, and think the school's going to take care of everything. That's not the case. We have to, again, just like back in the 80s with the computers, garbage in, garbage out. If we're putting bad things out in the world, we'll get bad things back. If we're putting good things out in the world, we'll get a much better, higher result than what we would if we'd done nothing. And for most parents, they just put their kids out in the world and hope that somebody else takes care of it and fixes it. If they don't like it, they fight about it, and that's when all these issues start. So what I had to come up with was a way to align parenting with a business model that people could grasp. Everyone's worked for a company, or people have either started a company. But in either case, you know what it's like to have a boss or customers yelling at you that you're trying to appease and trying to communicate with and trying to make happy. And you have an end goal, which is to get paid. And for parents, it's to make sure your kids are happy and secure. So I had to put all these parallels together to allow people to read this and go, okay, it's a weird concept, but it clicks. If I'm at a job that I don't like and I'm getting belittled and it's toxic and people are yelling at me, not respecting me, I'm going to quit. I'm going to go look for something else. That's human nature. A child cannot do that. They are in that home. They are in that toxicity. They are in that dysfunction. They are in that abuse, and they cannot leave. That's not fair. If we as adults have a problem, we know how to communicate it. Hopefully, we know that our vocabulary is to describe this feeling to this emotion or whatever it is. But young people don't have that. They don't have the world knowledge. They don't have the vocabulary. They don't have the experience. So in their mind, they create a story around that to process it. If a business did that and they said, hey, we're just going to not think about anything because we don't understand it, you're going to go bankrupt. Nah, okay, fine, we'll start all over. But again, a kid can't do that. A kid takes the story to understand something and they process it in a way that they can justify the actions in their mind. And again, to quote Tony Robbins, he had a thing called the Safe Life Story. And I used to watch these videos of him and thought, that is the most amazing thing. So he gets quoted in here immensely with so much stuff because his work really got me into doing what I'm doing. I respect his work and what he does. Like, if I could ever meet him, I'd probably, like, wow. I've worked with a lot of actors and a lot of people, but he's someone that I just admire because of the things that he's done to help so many millions of people with so many simple mind shifts, just little thought patterns that change. And I thought if I get parents to do that, and think about it in a business sense and apply it to their children, their family, the outcome of their family. You got 20 years essentially to take this small child in groups of years of 5. That's how I break down my business plan, and develop them. I don't use the word raise because that to me is more like what you do with animals and crops. I develop. So at each stage, you develop your children. Like you just said a second ago, I had to teach them how to, do laundry or do this. You're developing him at an age appropriate level so that the next stage, he's got that under control. Now we can go on to riding a bike or maybe doing this or maybe getting a job. And then when that's under control, now he can think about moving out one day. You're developing them along the way, just like you would a business. If you never thought about your business a year from now or 2 or 3 years from now, you wouldn't be preparing yourself for growth or problems or the economy, whatever it is that we have to deal with business. With parents, the same thing. If you're not thinking about what's happening, I read a story the other day about sextortion. A lot of parents today have no idea what sextortion is, and the suicide rate associated with young boys with sextortion is incredible. So I'm going to do a whole podcast on that. Well, these parents were interviewed and they're like, we don't know what that is. We have no idea what it means. So I did some research on it, and most parents have no idea, or they think that it's only going to be girls that are affected by this. No. Boys are affected by a lot more than what we think in society, but we don't talk about it because it's taboo. These are the things that I talk about with parents when you do your SWOT analysis. What are our weaknesses? Okay, what are our threats? Is there a crazy guy down the street? Are we gone too much during the day? They're by themselves. Like what do we have to be ready for? What's our school like? Is the school getting worse? Is the neighborhood getting worse? What's happening? Do we allow them online at age 10 or do we wait till they're 16? If so, what do we do? These are all the things that parents aren't thinking about usually until it's too late, when there's been a problem or something's happened. Then they try and go back and retrofit it, if you will, to fix it, to make it, okay, how can we make this happen? Preparation is also part of leadership. You had to be prepared for the worst. And parents don't always want to do that because it's hard. Or I did this my way as a kid. You did this your way as a kid, as the wife. And where do you meet in the middle? So again, just like business partners, you have to communicate what's good for me is good for you and vice versa. Or, I talk about this in the book, how do you negotiate so that you both have a win-win for each other, ultimately then for your children. So all of this stuff it's a lot if you just talk about it here in 30 minutes, but I tried to put it in the book in a way that was easily digestible so that you can break it off, and there's little assignments in there, different things, because I want parents to be empowered. If they're empowered, their kids can be empowered. And that's the biggest thing. Children today, teenagers today, young adults today do not feel empowered. And that's why they're so scared and afraid to move forward. And it's absolutely frightening what's happening. And we're seeing it in the workplace, we're seeing it in society, we're seeing it all over. And it has to stop. And it stops with parents being leaders in the home.
Very nice. Well, it's a fun concept. And you're giving me such a flashback to probably 2013. I saw William Shatner at a marketing conference. You talk about, like celebrities that you wish you'd meet. And like right. William Shatner, he had I guess it was a podcast, but it was like a YouTube show. It was like when all this stuff was super early. And he had a show called like Brown Bag Wine Tasting. Have you ever heard about this?
I have not.
And it was like so silly. Like he'd sit down with like Lou Ferrigno, or he'd go to some like flower shop owner in Santa Monica, and they just like they'd drink a bottle of wine in a brown bag, and they would say like what it meant to them, right? And Lou Ferrigno would be like, I feel like I could lift 400 pounds, and it would just be like kind of taking a thing and transferring it to some other aspect, right? Kind of like making an analogy that so that way you can kind of like bridge that leap. And so similarly, you're saying, well, hey, here's this thing we all know, like the workplace and SWOT analysis and all these, and also this kind of component of if you work a job or you're a business owner, you have to do the harder work, right? You're always doing things that, oh, I have to get out of bed and do this. Yes, you do. And you do it because otherwise there's consequences. And so it's like, just a funny, and then at the end they'd like take the bag off and see what the bottle was on the wine. But I thought, like, what a cute concept, because the conversation with Lou Ferrigno versus the flower shop lady, she'd say, oh, well, this reminds me of the orchids I grow in my backyard. And so it's just like you meet people where they're at, and it's fun to play with the ideas. And with the podcasting, there's the storytelling. And something that I really like about your book, which like I'll be using it forever in all my books moving forward, is you say, like, here's this concept, right? The SWOT analysis or the timeline, and you'll bring in like stories or quotes from your own podcast to like kind of enhance it. And it's like, everyone should do that, right? Everyone who has a book, a message, a mission, like you, something to say, like bring in the sprinkles of other people, because it's not just about you, right? It's like the things that you learn from Tony Robbins, or the guests that you have, or the stories of the kids when the school shootings, like it all kinds of interconnects in a messy way, but that can be fun, right? Like, how boring would life be if it's all just nice and tidy? We have to sometimes embrace the silliness, the messiness, and we can do that with some of these resources you have, right? There's this book, Parental Leadership, 7 Principles to Lead Your Teen in a Digital Age. And you also have the Lead Your Teen podcast, and you also have these new apps, is my understanding. But we're, like you said, we're trying to pack so much into a short podcast. I want to make sure that we focus on what's important to you. So as we're approaching the end of our conversation here, what do you think is the missing question? What do you think I should be asking you? I just don't know to ask you.
I would say, why are parents so afraid? Why are parents so afraid to be a leader to their kid and break out of that societal box? You know, there's so many parenting ideas today, from tiger parenting to eggshell parenting to gentle parenting. There's just, it's like every week there's a new one. And I think parents are looking for an easy out, and there isn't one. You know, we decided to have a child, another life, and we decided to give it everything we could. But at some point, like you said, it gets messy and it gets hard. And just like in business, same thing, it gets messy, it gets hard. And we have, you know, a global pandemic. Well, there's that. We have, you know, the economic shutdown of 2008. There's that. It gets messy, it gets hard. And in 9/11, when 9/11 was happening, my ex-wife was 8.5 months pregnant with my first son, and I was freaking out. You know, we just had 2 towers hit, and we had gotten word that the in Pennsylvania had been hit. I called my dad down here in Florida. I was in North Carolina, and I was like, Dad, what am I doing, bringing a kid into this world? Like, look what's happening. Like, what's happening? And my dad very calmly just said, every generation has a 9/11. I'm like, what are you talking about? No, he said, mine was the Great Depression. Then there was World War II. Then we had Vietnam. Then we had, you know, the Reagan attempted assassination. Then there's always something that every generation has to deal with. And he goes, this is yours. And it's going to change the world. It's going to change our country. It's going to change a lot of things. But not wanting to have a child because of the fear isn't the answer. Have that son, we knew it was a boy, and bring him up to be the best that you can make. And maybe we won't have another 9/11 or another Great Depression. You know, if every parent believed that it was someone else's responsibility, then it's just going to never end. So my dad was not the most poetic guy. He wasn't the most out there vocal guy, but when he spoke volumes. And I've never forgotten that from him. It's like, just, you know, do what you have to do to make your son the very best he can be, so that we won't have more problems. And it somewhat calmed me, because I knew my dad understood my fear. When I was growing up, he said it was Vietnam. It was, you know, the oil crisis of the 70s. There was always something. The economy was terrible. But as a kid, I didn't know that. I didn't know it was terrible. because he didn't allow me to see it. We dealt with it. And so when Liam was born, I decided, okay, I'm going to do the best I can. But again, it took some time to understand. And then we had Keegan, and both those boys now are Marines and doing great. I'm very, very proud of them. And had I not had another child or not had one at all, I wouldn't have all the messiness. I wouldn't have the writings on the wall and the spilled, paint on the floor. But I also wouldn't have the joy of a Marine Corps graduation. I wouldn't have the joy of knowing that my son called me today asking, "Hey, I want to buy this car. What do you think?" Just that camaraderie, that connection, because I would have been scared. So I want parents to just ask the question, what are you afraid of? Don't be afraid. You're going to get messy. It's going to get hurtful, but you can do it. You have to be the leader, and you have to be the one that they turn to, because ultimately kids want leadership. They want you to be that person. They may not say it at the time, but they do. And I promise you that if you are a leader versus a friend, and a leader versus a manager, which is the opposite in my book, and you are there for them when it feels like the end of the world, you will come out of it, and you will all be much better for it. And I think if my dad was alive right now seeing this, he would say, yep, it turned out pretty well. So that's what I would say to parents.
Very nice. That term leader, there's so much built into it, isn't there? You think of someone's a leader versus a manager, which is maybe like rigid and thrown into it, versus a friend, which is maybe like accidental, right? Like, do you really choose your friends, or do you just end up like sitting next to that person in school one day? Versus a leader, it seems like there's more of the nuance and the preparedness that you were mentioning at the beginning of our conversation, right? Where you know these things and you have stuff to say, but if you kind of, have it in reserve, and if someone comes to you and say, hey, here's my problem, you're like, hey, here's what I have to say about that. I'm not forcing my thoughts or my agenda on you. It's like you asked me, and I'm like, hey, I've seen this situation, and because you cracked the door, you let me in a little bit, then here's my way of helping you, and not necessarily solving your problem for you, but helping you solve the problem. So that way, that ripple effect that we've been discussing can then continue out there, right? Like, you got your son, and he's in the Marines, and now he's leading others. Now he's helping others. So by helping, you weren't overly controlling, you didn't hold him back. And it's just a great message and a lot to think about. And it seems like that comes up a lot in the self-help personal development, this idea of everything you want on the other side of fear, as Ralph Waldo Emerson says, or they say things like, don't wish it was easier, wish you were better, or that ships are safe in the harbor, but that's not what ships are for. So you have to get out there and accomplish some things, even though there is difficulty built in. And if someone says, man, this guy, Christopher S. Mahan, he's really made me think about just all these different issues, and we want to avoid some of these problems in the world, like parental leadership, attention deficient disorder, which you discuss in your book, and family dysfunction and denial. We instead want to be great leaders. What are some resources? What are some next steps as far as book, podcast, apps, etc.?
Well, the things that I look at the most are, I just scour the internet and see what's out there. And then if it's something, catches my eye, I'll research that and see how valid it is, or if it's kind of, honestly, a lot of things that I've read, all these different things from psychologists and PhDs, I'm thinking, man, why am I not there yet? This is exactly what I've been saying for 10 years, but I'm not a PhD, so maybe that's why, I don't know. But resources, there are resources everywhere. You can type in anything on AI. You can type anything on YouTube. You can type anything that is concerning you. If it's self-harm, if it's internet knowledge, if it's how do I get my kid motivated? One of the things that there was a thing the other day about motivation, and I read it and I was like, that's just like mine in my book. I call it Priming the Mind. This PhD was talking about how you got to inspire your kids and spark them. I was like, that's exactly what I'm talking about. I have something called EPP, effort, passion, purpose. And as a parent, it's our job to prime our children's minds. And what I mean by that is they have great potential, but if we don't give them something to spark that potential, their imagination, their thought process, that's going to sit there dormant. It's not going to do anything. So I talk about priming the mind and how we do that. But then also it's effort, passion, purpose, EPP. And if you don't make 100% effort in something, and again, this goes back to business. If you don't make 100% effort to make your business successful, it's going to fail. If you don't have a purpose for it or a passion for it, one of the great shows I talk about in this book is Bar Rescue. I loved all those shows because in Bar Rescue, you think they're going to go fix a bar, but in reality, what they're fixing is the staff, the mindset, the behavior, because everything was great at the beginning. Everybody's making money. It's wonderful. And then something falls off and the kitchen goes bad or the management goes bad or someone quit. Or so then the passion goes away and the purpose goes away. And by the end of it, by the time the guy comes in to fix it, the place is about bankrupt. So they have to, in one show, which I think is always kind of funny, talk to the people. They don't go and fix the menu until the very end. That's the least of it. They're talking to the people to figure out what was your effort level when you first opened. Oh, we're here every day. It's great. What was your passion for why you do this? What was your purpose for doing this? And where have you lost it? Where did that go away? So when it comes to our kids, we have to help them see the imagination of what they can do. I talked to a young boy today for this podcast, and he wants to be a TSA agent, but he's got a learning disability, and he didn't know how to ask for an accommodation. He knows about the ADA. So I'm giving him this information so that when he's ready to try to go with the TSA, when he graduates high school, he'll know how to ask for an accommodation. He'll know what the ADA is. He'll know that there are certain things, laws to protect him and help him. Parents need to also understand that there's resources everywhere to help you get to the next level so you can help your children be the best that they can be and to live up to their full potential. Resources are just everywhere. The problem is, how do you figure out what's going to work best for your family? That's where the work comes in. You can't just read something, go, we're going to try this. That's like trying to diet but not doing the exercise, or trying a new exercise but not, stopping a bad habit like drinking or sleeping in too late, whatever it is. You have to make all the changes. That's the hard work. In the book, I talk about that. It's like, this is what you have to do. It's not just going to happen. You have to put in the effort. If you're obese and you want to run a marathon, you have to change your behavior, change your habits, and create a new, more positive way to do things so you can achieve that goal. For parents, it's the same thing with their kids, regardless of what the situation is. Like I talked to mom the other day with the bank call. Her youngest daughter was now acting up because she was seeing the mom favoring the son, and they were calling the son special. So the daughter then at 5 years old thought that she wasn't special, and she was just, going crazy. And before the mom could even tell me what was happening, I said, can I tell you what I think might be happening between a little sibling rivalry? So I told her what I thought was probably happening. She's like, oh my gosh, I feel like you were in our house actually seeing this. And I said, now let me ask you this. When this was happening, how did the relationship between you and your husband change? Because there's a ripple effect. You have to put in the work because it affects every single aspect of your home. And that's what people need to understand. There's lots of information, but figure out what works best for you and how you can implement it to make it work for your family. I can't tell you what to do. It won't work. You have to feel it innately, figure out, yep, this is good, that's good. I can adjust things. I can, move it around. But just getting started and trying, that's the effort. What is your passion? I want to have a great family. What's your purpose? I don't want my kids to fail. And I don't want to feel like a failure as a parent. EPP, effort, passion, purpose. And I stress that in the book. I stress it every day when I talk to people, regardless of where I am. My boys, when they join the Marine Corps, I said, why? Why are you joining the Marine Corps? One wanted to feel like he could lead people and be in charge, not in a bad way, but he didn't want to feel like if something happened that he couldn't step up. The other one wanted some purpose. He wanted to figure out, what am I doing in my life? So I told him about effort, passion, purpose. And I'll tell you, you go to boot camp, you put in a lot of effort.
Oh, yeah.
And, it works. It works. Those three things, effort, passion, purpose. Know what they are, do it 100%. And you may not get the result that you were thinking right away. It's probably gonna be higher than if you didn't put in the effort. But you have to know what's important to you and what's going to work for your family. So I hope that answered your question, but that's, this just, people have to find the resources and figure out what works for them and then put it to work for them.
Of course. It's an underrated skill, your passion and your purpose and the discipline and knowing the price to be paid and actually like putting in the effort. I mean, it can't be a coincidence that the military puts boot camp first, right? And there's been so many situations in my life when there's a struggle, there's difficulty, and I tell myself like, this is kind of the test to see if I really want it, right? To see if it's something that I actually like. Am I deserving of this? And
that's one of my quotes. Sorry, that's one of my quotes. I'm sorry.
There we go. But like, it's like in parenting, sometimes things are hard, and it's like, well, what am I going to just give up? Well, that's not an option. So I need to solve this problem and have that curiosity. And you would have thought that when Google became a thing and you could just type in any search, you would have thought we'd all be geniuses, we'd all be millionaires, but still stuck with those same human problems. Then 20 plus years later, ChatGPT comes out. Cool. Now I can just research anything. Why aren't we all just living in mansions? Because you still have to do the work. You can give you limitless ideas, but unless you actually put that into action, then it's worthless. So make it worth something. And so we mentioned about these resources, like you have like an app or two coming out. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've been teaching classes for vocational rehab in the state of Florida since 2017. And I work with kids 14 to 22, 21. And then prior to that, I was in a federal job program, the YOA Youth Program, for 18, 24-year-olds. And I took all that information that I had gleaned from that time and what I'm still doing now with the vocational rehab kids. And I discovered that although a lot of kids could benefit from these classes, if they're not in vocational rehab and they have an IEP, they don't qualify. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking all of my curriculum and my information of all the literally 1,000 plus kids I've worked with and the hours I put this together, and we're building it right now. It's an app that is age it's like 13 to 17, 17 to 19, I think 19 to 22, and then I think 22 to 24, something like that. So it's broken up again by age group. So if you have a older child and a younger child or whatever it is, there's sections in there. The same app can help you. And then because I work with so many kids with autism and whatnot, there's a whole other section on that app that is geared just for kids that have an IEP or maybe autistic or whatever on the spectrum, because they have different needs. They have the same wants, but they have a different learning style. They have a different way of doing it. Their attention span's different. So on the app, like this mom that I talked to at the bank, her son was autistic and her daughter was not. And I told her about the app. Although their kids were young for this, it was perfect because she was like, so I can get this app and they can both learn on it. I said, yeah. And there's things there for the parents too. It's not just for the kids. It's a whole family. When people would tell me, fix my kid, it used to annoy me to death when I do teen coaching. Parents say, fix my kid, make something wrong with my kid. So there's nothing wrong with your son or daughter. They're not a machine. You can't replace a part and make them better. That's not how that works. And if you're having an issue with your child, there's something going on further upstream, which is you, right? It's the parents. It's how you run your household. So I would, first thing before I take any client, I'd say, I have to talk to the whole family. This is a whole family thing. And then from there, I'd figure out what the dynamic is. So on the app, it's the same thing. I want the parents to be involved in this app, whether it's in the learning, whether it's in watching the videos. So there's videos on the app, there's learning modules, There's quizzes so they can kind of pass different things. I'm thinking about, as much as I don't like doing little tokens and rewards, I'm thinking about doing, like, once they pass into one area to the next, maybe like a certificate or something, like, you did well, to kind of show that they actually achieved something. So the app is being developed. I have the full curriculum, everything's going. And what I'm doing right now is I'm talking to a lot of parents in autistic groups and different things. What's important to you? What scares you? What would you like to see? And again, I don't have a child who's autistic, so I don't know what that's all about. But I work with them and I hear the parents' concerns and I see their concerns. And I talk to the kids, and the kids give me their concerns, and they don't like being different. They don't like feeling a certain way. So I'm trying to create this app to give them all empowerment. Because again, when the parents are happy, the kids are happy. When the kids are happy, the parents, it's symbiotic. It has to work together. So I can't just say, here's an app for kids. Okay, that doesn't work. It's a family app. And because it's broken down by age groups, you could have a range of kids in your family. I'm talking to a foster care group here in Tampa to have them on, because foster kids that are aged out of foster care have zero skills, social skills, job skills. They just, at 18, they're out the door. So I'm doing a whole section on there for kids in that population that, maybe they're 18 years old, but they act like they're 13 because they've never been shown anything. So how do we then address their issues? They're maybe not autistic, but they don't have the developmental skills to be ready to be 18 out in the world. So I'm working with them as well. It's called Maddie's Movement. It's a great group. We haven't finalized anything with their organization yet in terms of the legalities, but we talked a few weeks ago and they were all for it. And even if they, at some point at the end, say, hey, we just, whatever, we can't do it, I'm still going to include that information for that population as well. Kids that are coming out of foster care. There's just tens of thousands of kids in that population, and they've been in it their whole life. And then at one point, society says, okay, you're on your own, do your thing. And they end up on the street. They end up in some bad situation. It's not fair to them. So the app it's a very grueling task right now, because there is so much going into it. It's far more grueling than writing a book. But I want to make sure that when people get on it, it gives them not just the information that they need, but it gives them that spark. It gives them that idea. It gives them that thing. Oh, I can do this. And that's all it was. Why was I so afraid of? And then they can take that on to the next level, so that when they're 22, 23, now looking for a job in the workforce, they can get out of that stigma that, oh, you're a young person, I don't want to hire you because, you on your phone too much, or you're not, no work ethic, or you're not this, not that. They will have the mental skills, maybe not the job skills, but they'll have the soft skills to be able to get that job. The hard skills they can learn. The soft skills is what so many employers want. And so many young people today have no idea how to be a good leader, how to be a good team player, how to communicate. So soft skills that we have to teach all of our kids. Parents can work on those. That's something that's very, very important, soft skills. So that's
And
what
you
the
say
app is
you
all
say
about.
that, and it's all connected anyway, right? So that if the kids don't have the soft skills, then there's something else upstream that needs to be fixed as well.
Yeah, because soft skills are the number one thing that employers want, but it's also what society needs. You look at these kids that are out of control; those aren't soft skills. That's just misbehavior, and that's just complete lunacy. Soft skills are things like how well do you deal with people? How do you communicate? Are you a good person? Are you a good listener? Do you have compassion? The one thing that people annoy me with in this world, they say, oh, there's you disrespected me. It's like, no, I have to know you first. You don't even know the definition of respect. What we do have is a compassion and kindness problem. No one is nice to anybody anymore. We're all trying to one up each other. I don't understand that. That's all ages. That's everywhere. We see it all the time. And our kids see that. And people glorify that type of behavior. And it gets them in trouble. So the worst show on TV is Teen Mom. When that first came out, I could have kicked my television, because they're glorifying teen pregnancy. And for the girl that isn't on television gets pregnant, her life is going to be a whole lot different than the girl from West Virginia who's on Teen Mom, and it's very harmful, those types of shows, because to me they are glorifying that teen pregnancy life. It is not easy. It's not fun. I've dealt with hundreds of girls in that situation, and trust me, no young girl wants to be in that situation. It's not fun. It's not fun.
Of course.
So,
But it seems like what you've done is you set a better example, right? They say don't tilt at windmills, don't shake your fist at the clouds in the sky. And if that 9/11 or the Vietnam or whatever that the huge event that's outside of your control does happen, it's like, well, can you do something better on your own side? Kind of like you said, well, I had this message to say, I had this mission, and the schools kept kicking me out, but I kept on broadcasting until I found what my fit is. And you were unapologetic about it, right? You're like, hey, there's this problem still not solved. Here are some possibilities, some techniques to solve it. And so this amazing app that you have coming out, does it have a name, or is there a place where we will be able to find it?
right now, I'm just calling empowerment to employment. I've used that line from my workshops for many, many years, empowerment to employment. And I think that encompasses so much, whether it's personal empowerment, hopefully to get them a job. But we cover so many things on this app, from just not just job skills, it's just life skills, how to get up every day, feel good about yourself, how to measure your self-worth, how to communicate with each other. There's so many things. Of course, a lot of it's in this book. So a lot of the curriculum is probably going to be this book broken down, because a lot of what I talk about is in this book. But it's just empowerment to employment has been something that I've used for, oh my gosh, probably 9 years, because I couldn't think of any other cool name that would really encompass what I do and why I do it. It's not just an employment class. There's so much more to that. It's not just a why do you feel bad class. There's so much more to that. So empowerment to employment will be the app. And I'm looking at launching that probably in April. I'm building another app right now, a nonpartisan political app, which will be out in January for the 2026 midterms. So that one's kind of taking the immediate forefront while this one's being developed to the curriculum. And entrepreneurship, that's another thing I talk about with parents. Teach your kids how to start a business. Mowing lawns, picking weeds, I don't care. Teach them the value of $1. Get them out to volunteer. Teach them how to be compassionate towards other people, to be kind to other people. And, just so important to get your kids out there and interacting with people instead of the laptop and the computer, because the digital age is taken over, and it needs to stop. We need to get back to our roots as humans.
Yes. Do we say, I wish my kids spent more time on their tablet? Do I wish they watched more TV, did more drugs? Well, heck no. But do I wish that they did more volunteering? Do I wish that they learned the value of the dollar? Well, of course we do. And so we want to have that next generation be better off than us. And so as far as like finding out, keeping up to date with you, and when this app comes out, etc., what's the website? Where should we go?
They can go to ChristopherSMahanEmpowers.com. There's always updates going on there. There's going to be more coming out because things are changing with me. So Christopher S. Mahan, M-A-H-A-N, empowers.com. Or on Spotify, Lead Your Teen is the podcast. I've got over 100 episodes on there. I haven't done much lately because I've been doing everything else with the book and everything, but I'm getting back into that. And you can go back a couple of years. There's so many topics and things, and there's stuff with just me with other people. Everything is on Spotify, and it's super easy to find. Lead Your Teen, very easy, and download it. I'd love to have everybody download it, take a listen. I do talk about my personal life. My dad passed away. I did some stuff with that. I'm very candid on that podcast. I think it's kind of cathartic, because I can't say the word right now. It helps me get through a lot of things too. And I think talking into a microphone is much easier than talking to a person sometimes. But knowing that people can hear your deepest secrets and desires and fears, if they can learn from that or relate to it, then I'm all about it. I'm an open book, no pun intended. But because I think we need to do that. People need to understand they're not the only one feeling a certain way or afraid of something and how they overcame it. Or, I don't have the answers for everything. I tell people how I'm feeling and what I'm dealing with or what I've experienced. And if they can relate to that, fantastic. If there's something they want to share, I give them my email. My email is leadyourteen@gmail.com. I'm always open to ideas, discussions, podcast ideas. Leadyourteen@gmail.com is the number one way to get to me. And, it's just, I want to start a community. I want people to reach out and let's start a dialogue. This is a great thing. These podcasts are great. Start a dialogue.
Yes.
We need to get back to that as a society. We've just shut ourselves out and shut other people out, and we are not designed that way as human beings. We are not isolated creatures. We are social creatures, and when we are isolated, we feel weird. We get depressed. We feel anxious. I think that's what's happened to young people because they have isolated themselves behind the keyboard, behind the digital screen. And we need to get them out and talking to people and volunteering and seeing that they can do things without the fear of ridicule or judgment. That's like a big thing for kids. I don't know where it comes from, but that is one of their biggest fears is, what if I make a mistake? Well, we all make mistakes. Trust me, I've made plenty. I'll make plenty more. But life goes on, right? That's the thing we have to teach our kids. Life goes on. And that's probably the biggest message is you're going to mess up, you're going to screw up, but life goes on. And just keep trying, make that effort, find your passion, live your purpose, and you'll be fine.
Very nice, very great. Well, you figure like what would happen if you were a prisoner of war, or if you're in jail and you really mess up? What would they do? They'd isolate you, right? They put you in solitary confinement. That's like the biggest torture there is. And then you combine that with the kids these days. It still blows my mind that this generation, they didn't know what pre-internet was like, right? They didn't know about checking the newspaper for the time your favorite show was on, or calling the phone number for movie times, going to Blockbuster. It was all just digital. And so you have to wonder with the group texts and the digital footprint, it's all just this permanent record. It's this surveillance state. So I do have a lot, not a lot, but some understanding of them thinking like, if I do the one thing, it's gone viral, right? It's on the internet. There's the sextortion. So it's quite a scary world for those kids to navigate with the group chats and the cyberbullying, and who knows what's coming down the pike as far as the future of all that. I'm sure it'll be even more to navigate, but we need to be educating of ourselves and to learn these things and just to communicate, as you're saying. And we've been speaking with Mr. Christopher S. Mahan. He speaks to parents, teens, young adults, job seekers, and he delivers impactful, inspiring talks that leave a lasting impression. He's got this blend of personal experience, humor, and actionable advice that makes him a sought-after speaker for events focused on leadership, career development, and personal growth. And we said that email address is leadyourteen@gmail.com.
Correct.
It's Lead Your Teen on Spotify. It's Christopher S. Mahan Empowers.com, and Parental Leadership is the book, 7 Principles to Lead Your Teen in the Digital Age. We've packed like 10 podcast episodes in one here, Mr. Chris, and my mind is just like bursting. I feel like we could burst out 10 more, but in the spirit of giving us one final soundbite just to wrap things up, it's time for the scary, frightening part of the podcast where I try to stump you. I try to put you on the spot by asking about a fun or interesting quote or lesson that has served you. So what comes to mind as far as a quote or lesson?
I would say there's a lot of quotes, but I would say a lesson would be to simply believe in yourself. And I've got so many instances where I didn't. I grew up with dyslexia and didn't know it until a couple of years ago. So I had this horrible, deep-seated voice in the back of my head that I could never do anything. I'd never be good enough. So for me, the lesson is you have to overcome. And so I came up with a quote a couple of years ago on obstacles. And that quote is, obstacles are not there. They're not in your way to stop you. That's the myth. The obstacles are in your way to beg the question, how badly do you want it? And when I was a kid, I was always wanting something, but I was always told how I couldn't have it, wouldn't have it, would never be. And I believed that for a long time until I started working in film. And then I got a lot of confidence because working in film, I didn't have to read a lot. And there was no math. It was just me working my hands and being me. And so the biggest life lesson is don't listen to others, listen to your heart. And I believe wholeheartedly that from the day we were born, there is a passion, there is a gift put in us, and we have to listen to it. And for so many of us, that is pushed aside because of negativity or people telling us what we can't do, won't do. And I was guilty of that. So I had to fight that. I had to fight that urge to give up. And I'm so glad I didn't, because I was told I'd never be a writer. I've written 2 books. I was told never work in film. I did that for 25 years. I was told never win awards. There's some behind me here. You can see everything people told me I wouldn't do, couldn't do, would never do. I beat it. So my message in my life lesson is never give up. Make that effort. Believe in yourself. Have that passion, that purpose, and just keep moving. Keep moving every day. Yep.
Beautifully said. Wonderful. Excellent. Inspiring. Christopher S. Mahan, empowers.com. And you can learn a lot right in there about the SWOT analysis, about effort, passion, purpose, and to just find out about parental leadership, youth and teen leadership, leadership for early 20s to 30s. And it's all the hub from there. Check out the podcast, the book, the apps when it comes out. Mr. Christopher S. Mahan, powerful and engaging empowerment speaker. Very lovely speaking with you today. Thanks for being here.
I appreciate it so much, Robert. It's been awesome. Thank you so much.